Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the BBC News at 1. The Justice Secretary says the government will not seek a judicial review over a decision to release the serial sex offender John Warboys. David Gauke told MPs
most notorious serial sex offenders. John Warboys' crimes caused revulsion. In his black cab, he cruised for victims, not fares. He was convicted of drugging and sexually assaulting 12 women. One of them he raped. But it's feared he may have attacked more than 100 in total. The decision to release him provoked astonishment, including at the top of government. In an extraordinary intervention, the Justice Secretary said he was looking to challenge the decision in the courts. This morning he announced that after taking legal advice, he won't be. But he offered this reassurance to Warboys victims.
Let me be absolutely clear. Warboys will not be released until their representations have been properly considered and his licence conditions are in place. Indeed, last week, I asked for assurances that the views of victims were being taken into account and that robust licensing conditions would be put in place to manage his risk.
Warboys is currently being held at Wakefield Prison in West Yorkshire. A lawyer for some of his victims is questioning why he's been freed from what is a top security jail. And the victims intend to press ahead with their legal challenge to try to keep him behind bars.
We presently don't know the reasons why he's been granted release, but what we do know is the nature and scope and extent of his offending. We know that up until very recently he was denying responsibility for the offence. He may still be. We know that the parole board only the previous year refused to move him to open prison because they considered he was still a risk. What has changed over that time?
John Warboys' victims have spoken of how they fear for their safety when he's freed and have called for him to be banned from the whole of the Greater London area. His licence conditions are still being finalised, but while the victim's legal challenge is going on, the black cab rapist, as he's known, will remain in prison.
Well, June joins us now. As might be expected, there has been a strong reaction already to the government's decision then not to challenge the parole board's decision.
That's right, Kate. And as one politician has departed from the legal arena, another, Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, has entered it, and he's saying that he is now looking at mounting a legal challenge on this decision. Now, this morning in his statement to the House, the Justice Secretary David Gauke said he was planning to expand the review that has already been announced into the parole board, and he's obviously trying to get greater transparency in all of this. And he said among the areas looking at this review would be the mechanism which allows parole decisions to be reconsidered. Now, this has been welcomed by the parole board. Its chair, Nick Hardwick, who is an advocate of greater transparency on all of this, he said a couple of days ago that the decision to release Warboys, who had served his minimum tariff of 8 years, he said that decision had not been taken lightly. It had been taken by a panel of very experienced people, and they had considered a wealth of evidence. But as we were hearing there, the victims are very unhappy about the fact that he is coming out so soon. They do not believe he has served a long enough term, and they feel that they have to now go ahead with this challenge to try to keep this man behind bars.
OK, June, thank you. Now, a couple accused of imprisoning and torturing their 13 children have appeared in court in California. David and Louise Turpin were arrested last weekend after one of their daughters escaped from the family home and called the police. The siblings, aged between 2 and 29, are said to be severely malnourished. The Turpins appeared in court hours after prosecutors detailed the allegations against them, charges they deny. Our North America correspondent James Cook reports from California.
That is, give up that right and agree that
Turpin appearing in court to deny torturing his own children and sexually abusing one of his young daughters. His wife Louise also pleaded not guilty. The couple are accused of imprisoning, tormenting and beating their 10 daughters and 3 sons. Prosecutors say the siblings endured the abuse for years as their parents plumbed the depths of human depravity.
One of the children, at age 12, is the weight of an average 7-year-old. Several of the victims have cognitive impairment and neuropathy, which is nerve damage as a result of this extreme and prolonged physical abuse.
The children were supposedly schooled here in their home, but the district attorney said they lacked basic knowledge. Some did not even know what a police officer was. They were reportedly allowed to shower just once a year and were beaten, chained up and tormented.
They would buy food, including pies, apple pies, pumpkin pies, leave it on the counter, let the children look at it, but not eat the food. About the only thing the children were allowed to do in their rooms or chained up was to write in journals. We now have recovered those journals, hundreds of them, and we are combing through them for evidence.
The 17-year-old who raised the alarm after climbing out of the home through a window had been plotting the escape for 2 years. One of her sisters made it out with her, back out of fear. This case has sent waves of shame across the United States and beyond. The authorities say the siblings are doing well. Some of them, at least, have almost certainly suffered irreparable physical and mental damage. The parents are due in court again next month. If convicted, they face life in prison. James Cook, BBC News, Riverside in California.
Well, David Begnaud from CBS News is in Paris in California for us. David, I imagine among the many shocking stories you no doubt will have covered, this must be among the worst.
It is, Kate. You know, the Child Protective Services here in Riverside County said yesterday they're trying to figure out whether or not some of the adults can actually function on their own. As your correspondent just said, they lack the basic knowledge, like what a police officer is. Some of them didn't even know what medication and pills were. We're talking about kids who literally didn't have much contact with society. According to the district attorney, inside of this house, they would stay up all night, the kids and the parents, and they would sleep all day. Their rituals were bizarre, to say the very least. But what's even more bizarre, Kate, is that no one has come forward claiming to know anything. Not a neighbor, not a family member, nor a co-worker. No one has noticed anything strange about this family.
OK, we have to leave it there, but thank you, David Begnaud there from CBS. A judge has ordered the Crown Prosecution Service to disclose the reasons why it dropped a rape charge against a student from Oxford University more than 2 years after he was arrested. Oliver Mears, who's 19, was cleared just days before his trial was due to start. Well, Danny Shaw is at Guildford Crown Court and can tell us more. Danny.
Kate, this is another case which raises searching questions about the way police and prosecutors deal with rape cases, how they're investigated and how they're managed up to trial. This is the case of Oliver Mears. He's an Oxford University chemistry student who was arrested 2.5 years ago on suspicion of rape, but it has taken up to this point today for him to be declared not guilty here at Guildford Crown Court. Now, the judge asked the prosecution to explain the reasons why there have been, in the words of the judge, so many unnecessary delays in this case. Sarah Lindop for the prosecution said that it had been a finely balanced case, but new material had emerged. What that material was, well, we're not exactly sure. It consists of something to do with a diary that has been obtained quite late on. There is some sensitive material relating to the alleged victim and also some investigations around digital devices. But this is the 4th time now in 4 weeks that a rape prosecution has been halted nearly at the 11th hour. And there's certainly an investigation going on, a wider investigation into issues of disclosure. That's the requirement on the Crown to disclose evidence to the defence. And there will also now be urgent questions asked about this case. The judge has demanded answers within 28 days from the Crown Prosecution Service. OK,
Danny, thank you very much. Now, scientists say they've moved a step closer to developing a universal blood test for cancer. Researchers are investigating a new method on 1,000 patients to see if it could detect 8 types of the disease. The Cancer-Seek test, as it's known, had a success rate of 70%. The team say their goal is to now develop an annual test for everyone designed to catch cancer early and to, of course, save lives. Our health correspondent James Gallagher reports.
More than 14 million people find out they have cancer each year worldwide. The sooner they're diagnosed, the more likely they are to survive. The test, called Cancer-Seek, is a new approach that looks for mutated DNA and proteins that tumours release into the bloodstream. It was tested on 8 common types of cancer, including ovarian, pancreatic and lung. In the study on more than 1,000 patients known to have cancer, the test correctly diagnosed 7 in 10 patients. The researchers say more work is needed and are starting trials to see if the test can find cancers seemingly healthy people. They say such tests could have an enormous impact on cancer mortality. Experts in the UK said the approach had massive potential.
This research is really interesting because it suggests that in the future, something as simple as a blood test could be used to help doctors diagnose cancer at an earlier stage alongside traditional diagnostic tests. Really important because the earlier diagnosed, the more likely treatment is going to be successful, so we could potentially help to save more lives.
But some experts say it's still early days.
This first study has been conducted in patients who've already been diagnosed with cancer. And so what we need in the next very large studies is to know, can they diagnose people with cancer who are asymptomatic, who are well, who we otherwise wouldn't have been able to pick up? And if the blood test can do that, we can be really excited about it.
CancerSeek is now being trialled in healthy people with no signs of cancer. That will be the real test of its effectiveness. Experts said the approach had massive potential, and testing for more mutated DNA and proteins would allow a greater range of cancers to be detected. James Gallagher, BBC News.
Prison inspectors have delivered a scathing report on Liverpool jail, saying living conditions there are the worst they've ever seen. They found damp and dirty cells with rats and cockroach infestations, as well as a backlog of around 2,000 maintenance tasks. Here's our correspondent, Adina Campbell.
Liverpool Prison has faced a long-running series of problems, but today's report by Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Prisons underlines a catalogue of squalid living conditions, including broken windows, an infestation of cockroaches and blocked toilets. It also found 2/3 of inmates had easy access to drugs, often smuggled by the growing use of drones, with more than one seized every week. And violence had also increased. More than 1/3 of prisoners said they felt unsafe at the time of the inspection.
What you're witnessing there is a prime example of the lack of investment at Liverpool Prison over the years, and that's down to government cutting the budgets and cutting the staffing levels. Now, it's due to also an amount of repairs that were outstanding at the time of that inspection. Over 2,000 outstanding repairs, simple repairs that aren't getting done.
The head of the Prison and Probation Service has admitted there were failings in the jail, but says immediate action's been taken by appointing a new governor, including improvements to cleanliness. Today's report has also pointed to concerns over healthcare, something the BBC revealed last month, with worries about suicide rates, staff shortages and access to specialist treatments. Lancashire Care NHS Foundation Trust says it has made improvements over the last 2 years, despite challenging conditions.
All too often what we are finding in prisons is that there are unacceptable levels of violence, that self-harm is high, that there are self-inflicted deaths on a totally tragic and astounding level. The reasons for this are many and varied, but what it does need, in our view at the Inspectorate, is close and serious attention to getting the basics in to keep people.
Liverpool isn't the only prison with problems. Yesterday, the government was ordered to make immediate improvements to Nottingham Jail over safety concerns. Another example of how the crisis in some of England's prisons is continuing. Adina Campbell, BBC News.
It's 16 minutes past 1, our main story this lunchtime. The decision to release serial sex offender John Worboys from prison will not be challenged by the government. And still to come, New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has announced she's pregnant. She'll be only the second elected world leader to give birth while in office.
In South Today, we'll have your full local weekend weather forecast. Also, how Swindon is leading the way in helping hydrogen-powered cars onto the road. And delicate the Hampshire women preparing to open the country's first menopause support cafe.
Now, this weekend marks 1 year since Donald Trump took over the office of US President. He vowed to change the face of politics stateside, of course, with his campaign slogan promising to make America great again. So 12 months on, how supportive, I should say, are Americans of their leader. Laura Trevelyan has been to Pennsylvania to meet Trump voters and those less convinced by the president. She's in Pittsburgh, as you can see, for us this lunchtime. Laura.
Well, Donald Trump won the great state of Pennsylvania by less than 1%, a very narrow margin. But it was a shock victory. Hillary Clinton was predicted to romp home here by as much as even 9%. So Donald Trump won here by appealing to white, blue-collar voters in declining manufacturing areas, promising to bring back their jobs and their dreams, promising to make America great again. And in his inaugural address almost a year ago, he promised the forgotten people of America they would be forgotten no more, and he promised to end the American carnage. So I've been out and about in the Mon Valley of Pennsylvania asking his voters if they feel that he has delivered on those promises. The Mon Valley in western Pennsylvania is the birthplace of US Steel. This factory was once owned by the 19th century magnate Andrew Carnegie. In its heyday, it employed thousands. Donald Trump tapped into the sense of industrial decline, winning by promising to put America first. Over lunch, I asked Trump voters for their verdict on year one.
He seems like he cares about the working class, cares about the people who are trying to make a living and have big businesses and things like that, and small businesses. I think he cares about that kind of stuff.
Some of the stuff he does I agree with, like the tax cuts, looking out for the working class people like that. But I'm not a big fan of all the rants on social media. I think they can do away with all that.
How are you feeling about that vote?
A little disappointed.
Juan Lacey, a small business owner in the Mon Valley, hoped Mr. Trump would run government like a CEO. So does this former Obama voter regret switching to Trump?
When I went into the voting booth and I pulled the lever, I was satisfied. I'm having buyer's remorse.
Why?
Because it's not consistent.
John Fetterman's a Democrat in Trump country.
But you get out into some of these areas that no one's visited, no one's taken the time to care, left it really open and ripe for someone to step in like a Donald Trump and say, hey, I'm the guy that can fix this.
The populist mayor of Braddock, with a tattoo of the town's zip code, counsels his party to understand Trump's appeal.
It's got to be more than, Trump's awful, vote for us. And again, I think it has to come back to like earnest, progressive, populist message.
In his inaugural address a year ago, Donald Trump promised people in towns like Braddock that he'd give them back their jobs and their dreams. There's an early electoral test here in Pennsylvania of whether the voters feel he's delivering. There's a special election in what should be a safe Republican seat, but the president's taking no chances.
A real friend and a spectacular man, Rick Saccone.
That's the candidate here. Mr. Trump doesn't want to lose this election, and he was in the Mon Valley Thursday with this message.
Very simply, your paychecks will be much bigger because under our tax cuts, you will be keeping more of your hard-earned money.
The question is if Mr. Trump can get the credit here for an improving economy, or if the heat generated by his tweets and feuds is distracting even his own voters. Now, Donald Trump was planning to mark the first anniversary of his year in office by flying today to his winter resort in Mar-a-Lago in Florida. However, US media are reporting in the last few minutes that the president is not going to go unless a bill is signed in Washington to keep the government running. There's a great big drama going over there in Washington about how exactly to fund the government to keep it running. Democrats are not supporting Republicans. Democrats holding firm. They want to deal on the fate of young people brought here illegally as children. Can Donald Trump, the deal maker, find a solution?
We shall see. Laura, thank you. Well, certainly President Trump's boisterous style and frenetic Twitter feed have certainly kept him in the limelight. But how has he performed then on some of his key election pledges? Tax cuts then, as he mentioned, controversial border wall with Mexico, and repealing and replacing Obamacare, his predecessor's healthcare plan. Christian Fraser takes a look now then at President Trump's first year in office.
12 months in the White House, his first year as a politician. So what does the report card of the 45th president look like? Well, let's remind ourselves what candidate Trump had promised. The mantra was, of course, "Make America Great Again." And here is how he proposed to do it.
ISIS will be gone if I'm elected president. Obamacare has to be replaced.
I'm going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it, right? Right?
A complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. Our jobs are being stolen like candy from a baby. Not going to happen anymore, folks.
Well, let's do the economy, because there's a curious disconnect here. The president has record low approval ratings, but the stock market is hitting record highs. This week, the Dow Jones smashed through the 20,000 mark for the first time ever. And economists say it is Mr. Trump that should take the credit. He's delivered on his promise to cut taxes, but will the boom on the markets eventually translate into wage growth? On trade, there's more to do. The first thing he did in office was to withdraw from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The NAFTA negotiation is ongoing. Trump's warning to Canada and Mexico is that he wants better terms or he will pull out. And he's serious. What about repealing and replacing Obamacare? Well, that turned into a congressional nightmare for the Republicans. The tax reform that was passed at the end of the year, that does chip away at one of the Affordable Care Act's foundations, the individual mandate. But the president's comments in December that essentially the job was done, well, that's fake news. It isn't. Where the president will think he scores highly is on foreign policy. Having vowed to destroy ISIS, the caliphate is, of course, on the run in Syria and Iraq. And despite the often alarming public feud with the Rocket Man, Kim Jong-un, North and South Korea are at least talking, for which the president has claimed the credit. What about the wall? Perhaps the campaign promise that resonated most with the base. Right now, the president is demanding congressional funding as part of immigration reform. Plenty of resistance. We can say with some certainty that Mexico isn't going to pay for it, at least not directly. The promised ban on Muslims, well, that turned into a travel ban on those countries that were predominantly Muslim. The legal challenge to that is ongoing. The courts, much like the media, have incurred the president's wrath. What is for certain is that the president through this year has persisted with the mandate on which he was elected, but approval ratings are low. He's lost special elections in Virginia and Alabama, and perhaps the ultimate test of Mr. Trump's presidency will come later this year with the midterms.
Christian Fraser there. Now, there's been heavy shelling of Kurdish positions in northern Syria by Turkish forces ahead of a possible ground offensive. The United States has given its support to the creation of a 30,000-strong border force led by the Kurds as a defence against the so-called Islamic State group. The Turkish administration sees Kurdish forces as terrorists and fears a de facto state is being set up. Now, New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has announced that she is pregnant. She and her partner, Clark Gayford, are expecting their first child in June, after which she plans to take a 6-week break. Ms Ardern will be the second elected world leader to give birth while in office and the first to do so in nearly 30 years, as Phil Mercer reports.
New Zealand's youngest Prime Minister since 1856 is about to face a fresh challenge. Jacinda Ardern and her partner Clark Gayford are expecting their first child in June, after which she plans to take a 6-week break. She found out about her pregnancy in October, 6 before she became Prime Minister.
I had to announce eventually. There's only so long you can say you were eating too many Christmas pies.
Yeah, I was showing from about 12 weeks. So,
yeah, eventually we had to say, and this felt as good a time as any.
Ms Ardern, who's 37, says she plans to be PM and a mum, and is confident she can juggle the role of motherhood with a high-profile day job.
I am a woman to multitask. I'm not the first woman to work and have a baby. I know these are special circumstances, but there'll be many women who will have done this well before I have.
On her first day as opposition leader last year, Ms Ardern was controversially asked by a TV talk show host whether she had to decide between having a career and becoming a parent. News that she's pregnant is rare for international leaders. When Benazir Bhutto gave birth to a daughter in 1990 while serving as Pakistan's Prime Minister, It was reported to be a first for an elected world leader. Phil Mercer, BBC News, Sydney.
Cricket now, and they may have lost the Ashes, but England are proving to be more than a match for Australia in the shorter form of the game. They've won the latest match by 6 wickets, having restricted the hosts to 270. Test captain Joe Root starred with bat and ball, taking 2 wickets and hitting a measured 46 to see England home. They lead 2-0 in the 5-match series. Now, tennis, and Britain's Kyle Edmund is through to the 4th round of the Australian Open, beating both his Georgian opponent and those punishing temps of 40 degrees Celsius. After the match, British #1 Andy Murray tweeted it was the best win of his Davis Cup teammate's career. Here, our sports correspondent Joe Wilson.
It's 40 degrees Celsius and we're outside playing tennis. Well, in Melbourne, nowhere to hide for Kyle Edmund. One game at the start of the 4th set against Nicholas Basilashvili of Georgia lasted 20 minutes. One game. Under the most extreme pressure, in the most extreme conditions, Kyle Edmund peaked.
One of his best rallies of the match.
Nothing much between the players in world rankings and nothing much between them on court. Edmund was 2 sets to 1 down, but from this moment, he took the 4th set up.
He's got it.
5th set, 12th game. Both men stretched beyond previous limits. So who wilts? Who wins?
He's done it.
Edmund conceded that if the tournament had said it was too hot to play, he would gladly have stopped. So was it unsafe? Edmund's the kind of guy who normally lets his tennis do the talking.
It's professional sport. It's meant to hurt. It's not meant to be easy. That's the whole point of it. But yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, if people do start to become ill, then it might be a concern. But as far as I'm aware, everyone's sort of just getting through.
And he is through. The Australian Open said they came close to implementing their extreme heat policy. Edmund's endurance impressed many, who described it as the biggest win of Kyle Edmund's career. None other than Andy Murray via Twitter. Well, there are 16 men left in the Australian Open. Kyle Edmund's one of them. Now, quick, while you can, find some shade. Joe Wilson, BBC News.
Well, we can stay with the weather theme because we'll take a look at it now here with Sarah Keith-Lucas, and from seeking the shade to, well, needing shelter, I should imagine, in these temperatures.
That's right, Kate. Some of us have got some blue sky and sunshine out there, but certainly temperatures pretty chilly and more wintry weather on the cards. This scene captured by one of our weather watchers in Dunblane in Stirling. A lot of lying snow around there. And in fact, the Met Office have issued an amber warning. Be prepared for disruptive weather due to snow and ice, particularly across this region of the southwest of Scotland, where we could see another 10 to 15 centimetres of snow falling on top of what is already there. And let's take a look at snow depths, what's lying out there at the moment across the northern half of the country. 36 centimetres of snow in Tulloch Bridge, Highlands, Scotland. We've got 22 centimetres in Loch Fay, Northern Ireland, and 3 centimetres of snow in Bingley in West Yorkshire. So there is a lot of wintry weather, snow and ice across many northern and northwestern parts of the country. Further south and east, sunny skies, blue skies out there. So it's feeling almost spring-like towards the London region, but towards the southwest of England and Wales, more showers to come. So further snow showers, particularly over the higher ground in the western half of Scotland, where we've got that amber warning in force. Also further rain, sleet and snow showers for Northern Ireland into northern England. For eastern Scotland and towards the east of the Pennines, quite a lot of dry and bright weather here, and some sunshine to take us through the afternoon across East Anglia and the southeast too. But drift our way towards the southwest of England and Wales. It's spells and scattered showers. Now temperatures around 3 to 7 degrees, but when you add on that cool northwesterly wind, it is feeling sub-zero for many of us, particularly across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland too. Then into this evening, slowly those wintry showers in the north will tend to ease away. Then we turn our attention to this patch of wet weather, rain moving in from the southwest. As that bumps into the cold air that we've got in place, we could see a bit of snow tomorrow morning across the higher ground of southern Wales and parts of southern England. So the Chilterns, the Cotswolds, Brecon Beacons too, some snow, some rain to the south of that, which will slowly ease away. So the south, still cold further north, but we will have lost all those wintry showers, so return to something sunnier for many of us during Saturday. A cold night Saturday night, and then during Sunday, this front moves in from the Atlantic, and as it moves in, it bumps into that cold air, and we could see significant snowfall on Sunday, at least for a time, before it turns back to rain. So we've got that milder air moving in from the southwest, but for northern England and for Scotland, temperatures still on the chilly side. So if you have got travel plans on Sunday, particularly across parts of northern England and Scotland, watch out for potential disruption due to more snow on the cards, but turning milder for next week, Kate.
Sarah, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Before we leave you then, a reminder of our main story this lunchtime. The Justice Secretary says the decision to release serial sex offender John Worboys from prison will not be challenged by the government. That's all from at 1 then, so it's goodbye. Me and the team here on BBC One will join the news teams where you are. Have a very good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Hello and welcome to South Today.